Eva, we once called you Eva. What do we call you now for the purposes of this recording? This is Basis 16 Update 2018 in October.
Yeah, please call me the unnamed extraterrestrial visitor to your time space. That will be more appropriate. The visitor to your time space.
For the point of view of the being that we addressed previously, we'll call you Ava. Is that okay?
Fine, all right.
But explain why you wish to talk today, and then we could address what's been going on.
Well, so I seem to have been part of some interesting events since 2016 when I was invited to Uruguay, which coincidentally was at the same time where Barry King disappeared from the scene. And his last message to me is that he was hospitalized and actually he never reappeared back. And shortly before that, he closed all his blogs and posted some security update or disappeared. In the summer 2016, I was invited to Oriental Republic of Uruguay. Not many people know even where is it, but that's in South America, just below Brazil. And I was invited there in the name of Myoshinji Zen Temple of Japan, whose next patriarch is still lives with his family in Uruguay. And he invited me on behalf of my extraterrestrial data, with that his temple and lineage are feeling familiar with the concept of higher entities or plasma beings, and that in their lineage their masters also experienced such entities, and so there seem to be higher level resonance between their teachings. I mean their inner teachings, not speaking of the ordinary, say Zen teachings as we know them, but the experiential teachings in the inner teachings. And then they wanted to explore my information a little bit further, and they flown me down to Montevideo, and then I spent a beautiful year at the seacoast of Uruguay. It's an amazing country. Part of South America. It's in a bay. Uruguay is resting on an aquifer. It's kind of water world. It's a bird sanctuary. It's a huge botanical garden. It's pure and pristine where nature and beaches are concerned. There are not many tourists except say Argentinians. It has its more intriguing side regarding its population. It also experienced period of dictatorship in the past, from roughly 1973 to 1983, where many of the Uruguayan middle class and intellectuals were so-called disappeared, and many of the better informed people actually exiled Uruguay before the onset of the dictatorship, and but now it's kind of a poorly struggling social economy with lots of children, and it's very young country. It's Spanish-speaking country, so English is not much used over there unless you speak Spanish. And so I had to study some Spanish during that time, during that year. Well, and then there are many different and interesting groups living in Uruguay from the past. from before the wars, from 18th century Spanish, dominant Spanish and Portuguese families, and then there are German families who exiled there around World War II. There are some remaining Nazi descendant of the Nazi families, and all kinds of other people. So it's an interesting kind of society. It's very selective. It's kind of dominated by the Spanish Masons, so-called, um, people who have some inherited power in their own mind. But it's an old world that simply not very progressive, as one would think about it. And during that year, I of course we discussed many things, and um, we have been mostly closed in a small, say, hut or a temple that provided safe environment. Also, UV and the radiation is extremely high on the coast, so during the summer it's nearly impossible to go out, even with protection. And but during spring, autumn, and winter season, it's rather beautiful, and it's very natural paradise. But then I have returned there, but then well, I don't know if you have any questions at this point, so I would
Well,
take a break.
that's fascinating because you mentioned Germans. I mean, is there any connection there? So-called secret space programs? Any kind of information on that?
Definitely there is, but it's not easy. It's not easy to figure out. I think I actually only came to that knowledge after I left. So I was sent out in September 2017. That's exactly 1 year after I flew down. So I was sent to San Jose, California, because I had an appointment with the director of SETI, Dr. Seth Shostak, and a planned meeting with him, which was very, very brief. So I also got to know some of the current situation in that area, which is, as everybody probably already knows in your circles, the infamous search for extraterrestrial civilizations with telescope dishes. The one of the main donors, a co-founder of Microsoft, Paul Allen, just passed away a couple of days ago. So the Allen Telescope Array that is north of San Francisco was sponsored hugely by that person alone. But the SETI research is struggling for funding. And even though in the news and in the media it was said that some famous Russian billionaire donated a huge amount of money to that project, in fact, that money was taken away by University of California. So the project itself is still on a very frail footing. So also I was not able to secure much funding or any funding as such for my own research. And from there I flew to India, to Dharamsala. Then unfortunately situation in India in that year was rather dramatic. There are many social upheavals. India is a big country. That will be a whole another chapter. And so then I had great difficulties in getting out of India because I was on short visa, etc. And then I flew through Prague, and the situation was so difficult and unsupportive. So I actually was forced to evacuate myself and fly back to Uruguay. And after I came back down to Uruguay, I actually kind of crashed to the program. So already on the way, it was becoming more clear to me that the whole invite and the whole specifics of my of my presence with them were not really simple, but there was a whole bigger meaning, but I could not really see or foresee that meaning until I returned. And when I came back, then a whole new situation started opening, and that's it. Can I take a break?
It's got a sort of a freer lifestyle, or why was it easier?
Oh, not at all. It's actually quite the opposite. As I said, I almost, so to say, crashed to the program. So on my return, I was actually met with very kind of dramatic gesture that I was pulled in and basically told that I should not have come back without a plan and invite, and because I was kind of exhausted after many months of hardships and travel, then I had to rest for almost a month. So they let me rest very well, and then I was being questioned on basically every aspect and feature of my say extraterrestrial information and my ET human origins data. That was the very reason of the invite. That was my Bodh Gaya extraterrestrial origins of mankind information.
So
So
who
that,
actually invited you? Which institution?
well, there was the Myoshinji temple. Myoshinji is a former imperial temple of Japan, and the emissary of Myoshinji, Master Jushu Sasaki, who taught in America, and then his successor there living down in Uruguay. But actually, I'm not permitted to disclose people's personal details. I'm only allowed legally and personally to share what concerns my information, because there was information that concerns global, all of us, but not others persons
In
personally.
what way does that work? I mean, are you saying that depending on the location of things, we can talk about it because it's public, but then other things you won't be able to talk about because it's not public?
Well, I can only talk about information that concerns that I'm familiar with or that I'm legally entitled to. So I can't share other person's personal data. Right? Is that correct? Yeah,
Yes.
it's in the law. So now the problem is actually with the law. So I can share general details, but I cannot show personal details. That's unfortunately in all our human legal systems. There is nothing that I can change about. I can share all that concerns me, and that's transparent. And all that concerns the information itself that I carry, that's also available. That's all right. Mm.
So does this mean that you're able to tell us in some detail about what you personally experienced, and if there are any more updates on the ET sort of origins of humanity at all?
Yes, I think so. Um, um, I can say that I was investigated for many months on that information in very brute manner. If I say brute manner, that means say, I was physically held and almost tortured in order to be able to verify. So they were able to verify whether I speak truth or not.
Yeah.
And I was also kept on very limited food intake, and I was basically kept to one point on a sofa where I sat and slept, and of course I had a freedom within the building, but that's how it went, and the situation lasted for many months. So I can say from that, I can testify that the information is important to somebody. I can also say that within those couple of months, it's been revealed to me that the say investigators or the program is run from Americas. That it's one of the programs that are run by one of the more secretive American agencies. It was repeated to me that it's an American program, that in the Eurozone we have no bearing on the program and vice versa. And that all of that my information will be utilized in future by them. And they also threatened me to take my life away many times, and basically to have me disappeared. And they were ready to do that if I objected, if I did something they did not want me to do. So, yep.
So, what are you able to tell us? Explain. What can you say?
Well, yes, it was. I think it was. They were questioning all about the spaceship that I have encountered. They wanted to hear everything again, but they wanted to hear it under stress. So that was the objective. It was not enough to have me interviewed in a decent manner, but it was to them it was necessary to hold me physically and under great stress, and threaten me life. And under such threat, they were probably satisfied to get all the details repeated and investigated. So I had to repeat all about the details of the spaceship, how I came to see it, how did it look like, how the beings look like, what way they were related to humans, what way humans descended, from those beings, what happened to the first humans, and so forth. Also about the propulsion systems of the spaceships and its qualities, possible distance in a space, even though these categories could hardly be determined. And then, of course, there was a huge interest in knowing when when are they coming back. So that's something they were really focused on or they are really focused on at present time, is predictability of events, because it seems these people, whatever agencies they are working for, they are very scientifically oriented people, and they are collecting global data. As we can imagine, they are very interested in the solar activity, and basically they keep their eyes on the horizon of solar activity, whether there will be another big say solar wind hitting the planet, causing global event, earthquakes, etc., etc. So they are probably also interested to know when is the next big contact scenario going to occur, and they already got an information from many people, probably not only from me, that there is bound to be a global contact event. They are adamant on that point. There will be a global contact event that will be visible, that will involve space, that will involve ships hovering above cities, even though they don't know when. They don't know where. That's not that information is even possibly not available, but they are interested in that kind of information. Um,
So, what can you describe about what the ship was and stuff? Then,
yes, I think I already talked to you about it before, but that ship is was a semi-globe hemisphere, right? It was a hemisphere, and it coincides with sightings of few other people. It was a large hemisphere. So, or what do you call it? Semi-globe.
yeah.
And such ships have been observed above Americas. They have been observed in Asia. They have been observed probably above Europe. I don't know. Maybe above the polar circles. They seem to have been frequent sightings above both northern and southern poles. And there's, of course, the poles are also, the North Pole is moving, it's shifting, it's moving towards Finland, it's etc. So these people, yeah, spaceship. Of course, it's a huge spaceship. It's not a small. It's not a small. These small scout ships. It's a big hemisphere.
What
Yeah.
kind of ships have you seen? I mean, since then, is this something that's been landing, mass landing somewhere?
No, I have had that very very deep and detailed entry when I went to that. I went been to the ship, as you know, Basis 16 is all about it. It's been in Bodh Gaya 2002. So that was you know, a whole big realistic event that contained many lots of information. There where I returned to the ET body and to the ET time, to our previous time, the original time when we came here, when we arrived in that ship. But they are basically, it seems, expecting for the return of the ship. So and they are expecting that some people will be retrieved by that
Is
ship
this a
or
trick?
something.
I
Or
mean,
things.
we've heard this story about do not go to these spacecraft. These things land. Don't go to them. Is it dangerous, or is it some kind of a trick that you're just simply going to be taken away into some place or whatever?
I don't think that many people would choose to go to that ship, or that many people will be ready. I think it's almost like, if you remember the movie, the Close Encounters of the Third Kind, then you know, there are many people who think they are ready, but at the end, actually, perhaps one or two are chosen because they only resonate with the frequency of the ship. So, you know, there may be lots of military personnel, lots of fans, ET fans standing nearby, but actually, out of them, maybe just few will actually resonate with the energy, with the frequency, and to the rest, it will feel very, very strange. So, yeah, I think it will
But
be.
this is amazing. I mean, how do you feel that they're responding to this, and were you able to give them the information that they want?
To whom?
To the people who were questioning you.
Well, actually, the thing is that they already have about half of that information. So when I'm speaking to you now, I'm actually having a little better perspective than I had last time, because I have received, that's why I wanted to speak to you, because this update is a little bit more, say, holistic. Since these people offered me uh, half half of their information, and I contributed a little bit of my half, and together it made better sense, because they were focused on, say, okay, you saw the past, now there is a present and there'll be future. So they saw things fitting into the human time perspective as of now.
Right. And what do you mean by as of now?
Well,
I mean,
that's
what are they going to
also.
expect as of now?
Well, it's not easy to do the math. It's not easy to do the prediction. How long is it going to take? How many years, or how many months, or how many decades? But in my own view and knowledge, we should witness such a event in our own lifetime.
Wow. But just continuing here with Eva, who is a person known as another being in 3D space. Is that right?
No,
No?
no, actually, more like multi-dimensional entity trying to fit into your 3D space. It's hard
So
to fit into.
explain that and explain all that. And actually, why don't we say hi to Barry King? If Barry King's around, do make contact.
Oh,
Okay.
see,
Yeah. Okay.
this attempt for contact. Shall I try again?
Yeah. So I've got my mug of tea here from Las Vegas. Yeah.
This time it worked.
So where does that leave us in terms of the what I'm trying to get here are the differences in. I'm being blocked here. I'm sort of I'm not having a very good. It just seems to be so immense what's going on. Could you explain all that, please? It seems something very big's happened.
Um, and now again, what do you remember?
Well, what I want to know is that you see, I'm seeing a
Don't
friend.
tell me that you are having total disconnect, please.
Oh, are you okay? Sorry, can you hear?
Yes, I can hear you.
A friend of mine who's coming from Norway remembers coming to this earth as one of the original landers, and she's Norwegian, obviously. So you're one of the original landers, original first arrivals, is that right?
Well, at least I met with the energy. I met with the beings. I feel to be part of those beings and energy, but in a way we all are. So all mankind and all of humanity, we are part of that energy and of those beings. Well, to bigger or lesser degree.
I mean, there were some people who were suggesting that we're all ETs, all humans are ETs, all of us, and our
Well,
soul. These.
that's my original testimony and predicament. Yes, we are all originally visitors to this planet. We are all visitors to
But
this
we
planet.
is it like a Hotel California? We can't leave.
We are the settlers. We are the first settlers to this new world. We are the first settlers to this new world, and we have been here. Speaking of humanity, for many millions of years. So we have suffered millions of years of adaptation, or so-called evolution, or evo-devo, right? Evolution and devolution, and retardation and degradation, and again, and many kinds of processes that go along with the particular geoclimate of this planet. So, but we came from another part of universe, and it's not even now. If we talk about where did we come from? We have a Milky Way galaxy, then we have a supercluster. We have some clusters out there, and the original cluster of galaxies where we came from is a few such superclusters away. So, by universal measures, it's real far, but suppose we had very advanced technologies that enabled us to surpass time and space, and created say hyperloop. And we were travelers. We were far travelers of universe and explorers, and by accident we ended up trapped on this planet and stranded on this planet for a couple of million years of local time, and that's how we became so-called humans.
So there's some kind of an event happening because we are seem to be coming through the loop is sort of finishing and things are changing. Something's different this time. Could you explain that, or is that actually happening?
Something is different From when?
Each time we've gone through this cycle of the rotation of the galaxy through this supercluster,
Uh-huh.
there's a change. There's a new intelligence happening. There's people are talking about artificial intelligence. That this is actually going to make us all into robots. What about
No,
that?
no, no. I would give a very strong warning against a belief and faith in artificial intelligence, because our, say, biological intelligence is much more, say, abundant, much more important, and it's infinitely bigger than anything artificial. But if you're speaking of time cycles and space cycles, then the universe, of course, is having its own intelligent matrix and its own living matrix. And let's think that with each progression of the bigger time-space cycle, we are actually kind of evolving. We are ascending on a spiral. So we are liberating ourselves from the prison-like conditions of this particular system. But there are many ways how to look at it, and perhaps, as you said, we are reaching certain, say, we are reaching some kind of meeting point, um, where from both sides these beings, the multidimensional intelligence of ours and human intelligence of ours, are able to resonate and find a parallel. I tend to think of it as a parallel systems that cannot completely match each other, but they can resonate. They can find a high level of resonance, and that's how we can learn between dimensions and between entities and between us as spiritual multidimensional beings and between us as humans. So from that perspective, as you see, as human beings, we are given these coarse bodies that are mortal, that have their limitations, their age or abilities or biological abilities can't be extended ad infinitum, but they can be only tweaked and adapted or adjusted in a small way over millions of years, whether we are here for 100 years as a human being or 500 years or 40 years. It's still a very tiny space and time. But as multidimensional entities and the original beings, our time span is almost infinite. So we can't do as much about the human condition else than trying to harmonize it with our more intelligent or more like cosmically intelligent selves existence.
How do you explain there's other aliens, there's other beings which are coming here and they have to manifest themselves somehow through us with other sort of aspects of some kind of other symbiont within other humans? Have you
Yes,
come across that?
yes, I think that they are also reaching. They are in a similar process of resonance. They are achieving this kind of symbiosis through resonance. So that resonance is found through similarities. Since our, say, human bodies and brains function by part as a transmitter or a receiver and a transmitter of information, we are able to tune to many different frequency fields and resonant fields. And so also other beings coming from different universes can actually reach a resonance and communicate through certain humans, not actually by by physically hijacking them, because biologically that becomes almost impossible. But actually, it seems to be. But that kind of symbiosis is more likely achieved through resonant fields of
So,
energy
I
and
mean, are you
information.
saying we can't have what's called a walk-in? An alien cannot take over a human body as such.
Oh yes, they can, but I'm trying to explain that it's more likely done through information fields. For example, it's more simple as in, I would say, inserting a piece of complicated information, whether that information is called a microchip, whether it's called a chip, whether it's called a biological code, or something that replicates their information. The host and the guest reach a resonance through a tiny little piece of biological information or an artificial information, and that itself is enough to induce consciousness. Though consciousness as such is not well defined by human science quite yet, and there are thousands and millions types of consciousnesses. Each consciousness can be created by such a parallel resonance of information fields.
Is that like what happens when one human being meets a so-called ET, and yet the other human, it shocks them because the resonant fields aren't the fields aren't resonant, so the biological aspects of the brain of the person who's meeting the other being fails. That they just can't communicate it, or they even.
Yes, so if there is no resonance, then communication fails naturally. So as human beings, we communicate on a basis of similarity of, say, language or manners or info and manners and information and biological information that we were born with from the beginning. Now suppose there is another entity coming from somewhere else in space, and they share very little uh, original information with us. Then usually those first attempts for communication end up very strangely, or they end up in scare, or most of the information fails. But when a little piece of, you would say, a gift of information is exchanged between the host and a guest, between both parties, then intelligent communication, advancing communication is possible.
When people don't know that they are, when you have a situation where people don't feel that they're in the right body, as people make all these tattoos over them bodies as if they're some other kind of being. Is that when it goes wrong? Is that when another being comes into the body and feels that they're another soul? Is that the difference between a soul and an ET as such? Another alien soul?
Um, Yes, I think so. That in past, if you look, for example, at the habits of people, say South America or in Africa, then people who try to replicate a long skull, long skulls, or
Yes.
who did various body mutilations in order to, I think they use it as part of their worship, and a part of the creating a similarity. So as you would say, similar attracts similar. So by worshipping or by changing one's own body to that of another entity, they more likely try to also create a spirit, uh, or a consciousness that would bring them closer to such entities. I think it's a globally observable phenomenon that people actually replicate somebody and try to create a link between them and the other.
Well, I mean, we have a situation here now where we've got, I think, six different types of sexuality, because the confusion between male female is now almost, you're not even almost allowed to say that there's a male and a female. You've got this transgender. There's this complete mix of the basic sexualities of human beings, and ultimately that must mean that we're not going to be around that long because we can't reproduce naturally.
Uh, I think there is. I think that despite the common scientific prejudice, I would call it prejudice, human diversity is huge, is vast. It's much vaster than the prejudice has been teaching us through the Middle Ages and through the 20th century. So if they have been teaching us that there are only two genders, or that there are two genders, it's just about like teaching us that there are only two basic colors. At the beginning, our ancestors, they were so-called androgynous. They
Yeah,
were very holistic. But since then, and since their genome or their bio code, their biological information split and diversified through millions and millions of years of combinations and recombinations and evolution, we ended up in the world of today. And I believe there will be even more progression in the population explosion, population that can reach from today's 8 billion to maybe 80 billion people, and we will observe many different types of entities that will have all kinds of morphological features, and that probably those who won't be successful carriers of the intelligence, they will perish. And those there's natural selectivity also that can be stopped. So
now
I would not worry about that too much.
yeah. I mean, it was interesting the way that you compared the Middle Ages, the Dark Ages almost, with the 20th
Yes.
century. That would imply that in the last few years there's been a great deal more information that's been made available. Can you go into that, please?
Well, that's perhaps my observation, but I have seen that the science of even the last 20th century has been still very rigid and trying to enforce certain patterns, and teach science that's been fairly narrow-minded, and they just about got out of that box. And of course, they just got to bigger box, and then there'll be bigger box, etc. But currently, at the moment, at present, we can see boom of scientists who are neither alternative nor non-mainstream, and who are really open-minded and prodigious people coming up with advancing progressive theories. Because there are dangers. The dangers are not those open-minded people in science and media and everywhere. The danger is with the power game, and people who are actually trying to control information, who are trying to control power sources, who are trying to control energy sources, etc. So there is, people like Elon Musk, people who have maybe who are very talented, but their ethical understanding is kind of immature.
Yeah,
So
I mean, Elon Musk's talking about existential extinction of humanity, and the transfer of humanity into some kind of AI, with I think his company's called Neurotech. There's a number of companies out there which are about joining technology with our a body, or maybe not a body at all, maybe a spacecraft.
yes, I think that's very dangerous, and it's been already explored by sci-fi authors of pre-war, I think between the wars, there was a couple of science fiction writers and movie makers, speak of Aldous Huxley and other people who wrote great books about how humanity is going to construct a type of artificial intelligence or a factory for an absolute and things like that. And ultimately, it will almost endanger its existence. And 100 years later, we are nearly at that practical point where actually the most progressive so-called pioneer technicians and computer scientists are actually dreaming of creating and doing just that.
Well, I mean, this is the whole point about Barry King. I mean, he was talking about these program generated life forms being built in a base in Berkshire, and we had somebody on Facebook who explained that he'd actually was one of the guys involved with maintaining its basic infrastructure, the plumbing, so to speak. I mean, every base has got to have input and output, and he was dealing with that. I mean, what do you think of Barry's original program generated life forms?
Well, that was obviously not the technology and the information was not human, right? So, and it was not Barry's. Also, if you, yeah, it's almost ridiculous because if you read Barry's Voice magazine from say 80s and 90s, he has predicted or say stated or testified of most of what is actually most technologies that are in open sphere now, and they are no longer a mystery. No, genetic experiments are no longer a mystery, and the technologies described there are being discussed openly, and it's only proven that he has been he's not been a dreamer. He has been a quite a genuine person who saw military projects that were 20 or 50 years ahead. But when we speak of the human, there were human genetic, pardon, there were human genetic experiments, and then there were non-human experiments with space creatures that most of us have never seen or we don't know about them. And then again, it's top secret. So, for example, where he says that. Also 100 years old was placed on certain information regarding extraterrestrials shortly after World War II, because that information itself was too dangerous, and it could have led to world destruction if it was taken by wrong hands, such as were the Germans, and it could have been anybody else. It could have been the Russians, it could have been the Americans, it could have been the Chinese. So obviously the oath has been placed on that information, and it was never discussed since internationally. It's not been discussed till now. So there's been a meeting between President Trump and President Putin in Helsinki a couple of, I think, months ago, and we were all watching whether that meeting is going to be successful or not. And from a simple observer's point of view, I would say it was a diplomatic meeting, but they probably did not share any deeper interests or details. So it's impossible to say whether they are sharing. I don't think that they are yet capable of discussing this top secret information, or that it's coming to be disclosed any soon. That the different countries had wrecks of spacecrafts, or that they recovered bodies, and that naturally either or all of them experimented with the biological material. That's what probably any country probably could have done. So what do we know? What did they do, right, with creating a programmed life forms?
Well, it's. Have you heard of another term called non-human cyborg units (NHCUs)?
Um, yeah, maybe a similar, but there is a difference. There is a difference whether we talk of human drones, whether we talk of drones can be beings created by cloning. That cloning can be created from any kind of biological info that can be done from any type of genome, right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then with for example, even during World War II, it said that the German scientists aimed at creating such a slave army of drones who won't be really of advanced intelligence, but they would be actually physically more capable to carry heavy loads or to run long distances or simply perform physical chores and tasks. And uncannily enough, Barry's description of program generated life forms and its meaning was very similar, even though these creatures were probably originally from somewhere else. They look different, but them too were created to perform tasks, physical chores. So they were not able to surpass human intelligence.
Human intelligence, but what about these supercomputers and the quantum computers, which can exist in more than one state? I mean, they seem to be the way forward. Something's happening there.
Sorry, I missed your question.
Uh, I mean, there's the 2045 agenda. Have you heard of the 2045 agenda?
Um, can you specify?
Essentially, by the year 2045, there's these scientists will be having humans officially only existing as an avatar in a computer matrix, whereas
Oh,
the body will have long since been removed and potentially made into a cyborg, the combination of technology with biology.
I would say please do not believe it. It's not going to happen. If we speak of human intelligence, and always remember where we came from. Please always remember where we came from. We came from the source. We came from our home far away in stars. We came here as enlightened beings with infinite capacity to respond to diverse circumstances. And there is no lowly creature that is going to rule over us or that is going to destroy our potential. We can be endangered, we can be temporarily enslaved, we can be beaten, we can be tortured, but we can die and be reborn. But we will always survive, and our potentials will always survive, and we will reach, back to stars. We will expand and flourish. So people who are pure evil and who make such demeaning predictions to humanity should be should be really locked to their chairs and close to their computers and to their computers' games, because this is where their intelligence applies and this is where it fulfills its purpose. And people with such evil predictions should be put on, locked to their computers, not the rest of humanity. I can assure you that the rest of humanity are living beings who want to live, who want to run and laugh and create and be beautiful and continue living, and they'll never allow for the few bad freaks to destroy our civilization.
Well, this is exactly what the 5G people are talking about. We're trying to alert people to the dangers of this technology and make sure it doesn't happen. But I mean, there's people in England who were brought to court because the court, the other people, the councillors, Gateshead Council wanted to completely shut Mark Steele, who was campaigning about this neurologically toxic series of frequencies which they're using, which actually damage the mitochondrial DNA. It damages living beings. I mean,
Yes, but yes, but all these technologies have to be stopped.
yeah,
You know,
exactly. Yeah, that's the whole point. That's part of the conversation. Whole point of the basis logo behind me, as to stop us becoming cyborgs. But I don't think we're going to be able to do that. I think they've already done it.
no, I
Or
don't think so.
what do you feel about that?
Well, I think that it's not about again, it's not about stopping the progress. It's not about totally stopping the technology. It's about making them life friendly. It's about making them human friendly, and it's about um, giving living beings their value, giving the value back, and ethical value, emotional value back to living beings, instead of worshipping idols, technologies, statues, or whatever material.
Yeah, I
It's
mean, I totally concur with that. But these nutcase scientists are pushing it through. They're trying to stop people from protesting about it. This artificial intelligence.
They will be stopped, but I as
How do
it,
we do that? How do we? What would you tell people? How would you make things move forward on that?
hmm, I can say that the most important thing that needs to be changed on Earth is bringing up clean energy resources. The If I go back to Uruguay and what's been discussed between me and the people of the bigger scientific programs is that also I have witnessed a situation flying. See, last year itself I flew, and you may be flying frequently, and I flew from South America to North America, then to India and back and around. And I have seen a huge increase in pollution globally. The pollution that is literally swallowing cities that are being turned to they're being turned to our own graveyards. If we think of mega cities, pardon,
But
if
what
we
I'm,
think of if
yeah,
we think of mega cities, they such as Tokyo, New York, Washington D.C., Paris, London, etc. They're becoming our own graveyard, and the situation is grave. There also in the future there will be scarcity of water, clean drinking, fresh water sources. That's already becoming. It's already coming to open and obvious. And
yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean,
hand in hand with that are energy resources. So whatever is being the fossil fuels, right, and energy grid, it's endangering us the most at the moment, and it's also potential source of risk as the greatest risk to human civilization. Above that, if we speak of frequency fields, as the internet, 5G, etc., etc., the danger of these things that people are becoming paranoid about these frequencies is minimal compared to the say mass to the massive grid encapsulating this planet, and that grid at some point is going to be hit or can be hit either by a weapon or by a
could you
flare.
explain that? What sort of grid are we talking about? What influence does it have on things, and what's this attack?
Is the whole connectivity of the electric of the wires, so-called wires, this power distribution from fossil fuels, from the tankers, from oil rigs, burning oil rigs all over the world. Think Iraq, burning oil rigs. Think Mexican Gulf, and on the oil ones, sink power stations, sink nuclear power stations, sink nuclear weapons, and etc., and electric grid, power grid. So at moment of any say direct attack, that could be solar flare, or it could be a powerful weapon unleashed by any of our madman politicians, etc., or not even politicians, or terrorists. If in case of such attack, the whole infrastructure is going to burn, is going to get very hot, and it could devastate large portions, large pieces of continents and human civilization. That itself is more dangerous than any sort of Wi-Fi, 5G or 3G. Think of the, what kind of, say, electromagnetic energy we are surrounded with, and that is currently endangering us the most. So we need to rebuild, we need to relocate, we need to move to clean technologies, solar panels, be independent units that can be charged from clean energy, by clean energy.
What
Okay?
about the cash movement? You know, this guy called Cash, Dr. Cash, I think from Brussels, I'm not sure, but he's got this 0 point type technology, and he's trying to get people to build it and all that sort of stuff.
I don't know the specifics
It's
there.
Keshe. It's Keshe.
All right, but there is a trick in using the term 0 point energy, and I had a discussion on that already with these scientists. I mean, with people, talking to me about it very frequently. 0 point energy, 0 point energy. It's a tricky term, and even in case of so-called 0 point energy, there is usually a mechanism involved that is non-zero, that is dual mechanism, or that is kind of machinery. The deciding factor about whether we're going to give go to that energy, is it clean? Is it clean source? Is it clean? Is it non-invasive? Is it eco-friendly? Is it human-friendly? Is it, of course, economical? But at the beginning and end is more important whether it's clean energy.
What type of generator device are you talking about? How is that going to be made? How you physically make that clean energy?
Um, in in my opinion, and the opinion, say, of my ancestors and the beings that I resonate with, it would be still wiser to use, see, solar energy. I see solar energy as the most availability for us on this planet, say economically and energetically, most availability, and it's cleanest. Second, there is energy in the air, quite like windmills, but there are many different types of such dynamic energy, whether it's the tides, whether it's wind, or whether it's water, and etc. But solar energy is still the most available.
That brings us. I mean, okay, do a take two on this. You've been traveling, and you've been in the Himalayas. Do you want to speak about how some of your travels have been going?
What would you ask me about
Well,
something
I think
that's going to be
you
useful to us?
communicated with me about being in the Himalayas, and you could see other things. Have you seen? Well, explain what you were seeing, if you wish to talk about that.
Well, I would probably have to return back to the global weather phenomenon and say that the slopes of Himalayas, as I have experienced them 23 years ago, 22 years ago, when I started to travel to India, were different from what we are seeing now. unfortunately for us, that also the Himalayas are getting devastated by human invasion, that glaciers are melting very fast and faster than predicted, that local farmers and the mountain people, the gadis, the shepherds, are observing what's going on. They're becoming they are, due to the internet, or thanks to the internet, are now much more informed and educated, and that they are on par with us, where weather observations or climate observations are concerned, that they see serious climate changes and changes to the environment.
Is that not happening with the sun? Are you aware of that?
Yes, the
The
sun
sun, the sun is
activity.
changing.
Well, the sun activity is on target on observation, and the ancient rishis, you remember all the ancient people from Egypt to India, their primary deity was the sun. And again, if we go back to the energy grid and the sun energy and say Egyptian pyramids, now what do you think that these pyramids firstly served? They served as energy collectors. They served as sun collectors. You know how? Let's talk to Zahi Havas. Let's let him allow us to do a project. But of course, that's very imaginary project. But if each of the Egyptian pyramids could be covered by, say, silver plates, each and all of the Egyptian pyramids could be covered by silver plates, how that would be quite simple. And all those pyramids could collect energy that would actually supply most of this planet with electricity. It's scientifically calculable, and it's provable. But nowadays we only see a stone pyramids. But perhaps in the time of ancient, pharaohs that preceded the civilization, these pyramids were actually covered by golden plates or silver plates, and they were collecting energy, and that's how these people already had technologies that enabled them travel, that enabled them different miracles that we are not aware of now, and we still keep guessing how did they do it, why did they do it. But since we see on the stones, then we can complete the guess. But from these ancient Egyptians who worshipped so-called god Ra, then the Indian,
God Ra. The word the talking about the
the sun,
god Ra.
yeah. So it already, the ancient people, they knew that the sun is the main deity, is the main life giver. There won't be much life if there was not a particular sun frequency, and that the sun is also a destroyer. So they worship the sun in many forms, and they knew it's a life giver. And it has also a tremendous destructive power, and perhaps that's why they build these specific structures, this specific grid, to protect themselves from the destructive power of the sun and to use its power at the same time.
You're referring to some kind of massive solar storm, solar flare, or some kind.
Yes, also in their times, they had to protect themselves from the scorching heat and the power of the sun. So the more advanced members of the scholars of their society actually lived inside these pyramids instead of living outside like the lost tribes of Israel, right? Like the nomads, like the barbarians. So they had to protect themselves from the high UV. And they were perhaps also experiencing the destructive power of the sun all over the world. So they lived inside. And they knew of the potential, right? So maybe we will have to do the same. Some advanced, say, business people of today are actually trying to do the same. They are building themselves advanced facilities where they can hide from the sun.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, this has been a fascinating update. It's good to see you. It's good to see you sort of, all sort of, there and discussing things in great detail. Uh, I think I've got another call tonight, so I'm going to have to sort of pull things off for now. But it's really good to see you. It's been 6 years, 6 years, long time. A lot of things happening.
Yes.
And it's good to see you looking well and all those books
It's
and
good to
things.
see you.
Yeah.
It's good to see you. You are still at the same place.
No, I moved. I've moved away from there, but I've managed. I'm in the Wiltshire area now. I'm in the middle of crop circle country, as they say.
Wow. Wow. I would love to visit.
Yeah. Is there any final sort of things you'd like to say for this time? Can people get in contact with you? You're on Facebook, is that right?
No, I am not. I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on any social media. I am at present moment. I'm in Finland and I'm in beautiful town of Turku. And I'm in a library of a noble man, Professor Ratio, who is a linguist and Buddhist, and also NGO activist. And if people want to, just not to forget to say that I lost most of my belongings during my 2 years mission. So and if people wish to connect to me, they're welcome. They can email. They can reach me by email. If you post my email, that's probably the only way how to reach me at the moment, because I'm
Okay.
not on any social media.
Well, we're doing this as a record. We're not actually live for this time, so we'll put that in on the edit. So, um, well, it's good to see you. May your God go with you and bless you. I suppose is that what we say.
May God bless all your listeners, and may everybody reach a better harmony with themselves, and better, more peace, more prosperity, and more love. And don't forget to love yourself and each other, and give yourself a hug.
Very nice. Well, this is a Basis 16 update in 2018. And for now, we'll call that a day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Miles.
Cheerio.